say? This would be a good time to take my shirt off. I'm the anchor, right? I mean, everybody else is going to go
You can start when you're ready.
Okay, we're going to get started if you want to take your seats. Okay, I think we're just going to get started. All right, ready? Okay. Well, hello and welcome to our session From Hawaii to the Heartland, Advancing Equitable and Ambitious Solutions to Climate Change in U.S. Cities and Counties. I'm Hillary Varnador. I'm the Vice President for Cities at the U.S. Green Building Council, and I'm delighted to be here again on the America's All In Pavilion. I was here last year when we were, last year physically maybe.
Hillary, could I suggest you pull the mic a little closer so everyone can hear? Yeah, just a little closer to your mouth.
Yeah, sure, sorry. So I'm Hillary Varnador. I'm Vice President for Cities at the U.S. Green Building Council, and I'm delighted to be here again on the America's All In stage, celebrating the work that we're all doing at the city and county level on climate change and climate action. So my work at USGBC is centered around LEED for Cities, and I'm sure you've heard of LEED for Buildings. We work on green buildings. The U.S. Green Building Council is well known for that. What you may not know is that we also have a rating system and certification program that local governments use. And so we're helping local governments set goals, measure progress, and improve their communities through a broader sustainability program at the jurisdictional scale. And in fact, we have now 175 global cities and counties that are engaged in that work, and about 130 of them are certified, including 2 of the cities that are on our stage today. You'll hear a little bit more from the city of Des Moines and city of San Jose, I'm sure, about the work that they've done with us too. So last year I was in Glasgow. That's when I was on the stage, and I happened to be with Mayor Suarez from City of Miami, and I just have to give him a little shout out since he's not here. I saw him in Buenos Aires at the C40 Summit a couple weeks ago. On the stage, I said, Mayor Suarez, we've got to get you certified in LEED for Cities. I promise we'll have it done by COP27. And I'm not going to spill the beans, but just pay attention. By the end of the year, there's going to be a big announcement with City of Miami. We'll be making it together in December. So it was really great to be with him last year. And I'm very honored to be on the stage this year with 3 elected officials. So from Hawaii to the Heartland. So I was really excited to bring this panel together. It's always a challenge because you don't know which elected officials will actually be at the COP on the day that your session is selected. And so I'm personally very excited to talk about ambition at the local level on climate, but the opportunity to be able to talk about it from Maui County to California and San Jose and then over to Des Moines, Iowa is going to be really awesome. You're going to love this session today. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our elected officials individually. They're going to give a few, maybe up to 5-minute remarks, just opening statement about the work that they're doing, kind of the context of climate change and how they're really working on resilience, adaptation, and mitigation in their local communities. And then we're going to have a moderated dialogue. We're going to save some time. I know we started a little late, but we're going to save some time for audience questions at the end. So if you have something that you would like to ask the council member or the mayors, you'll have this time to do so. So with that, let's start with Council Member Kelly King. She represents Maui County in Hawaii. Thanks so much for being here and excited to hear the work that you're doing on Maui.
All right, thank you, everybody. So you want us to start with a five minutes or so, or just a few minutes of introduction. As she said, my name is Kelly Takaya King. I'm in my third term on the Maui County Council, and I chair the Climate Action, Resilience, and Environment Committee. So this is a committee I created in 2019 or in 2020, and we've been trying to operate at breakneck speed. And I came from the private sector. I'm also the vice president of a company that my husband and I founded 27 years ago called Pacific Biodiesel. We're the oldest biodiesel company in America. So I came out of the private sector with with very little patience, put it that way. We want to see things happening. I have not driven on petroleum since the year 2000. So, that's what I want for everybody else in the world. But that having been said, I would love to have either one of these two mayors in my county because we've really been fighting our current administration, and the council has been trying to move ahead on some of these initiatives. Right now, we're in the throes of addressing things like biodiversity. We're addressing erosion. Some of our hotels are falling into the ocean as we speak. We're addressing flooding when we have these climate disasters. Our wetlands in my district of South Maui have shrunk from over 200 acres in the last 20 or so years to now we have less than 25 acres, and that's our first defense against flooding. We're also working on revamping our watersheds because now I sit on the local government advisory committee to the EPA and have realized that our watershed plans are not up to EPA standards, so therefore we can't apply for those grants. So we're trying to revamp some of these problems that we've inherited from the previous decade of build, build, build. My district was actually the fastest growing, most developing district in the state of Hawaii in the 80s and 90s, and they were building with wild abandon. Put hotels wherever, put housing wherever. Now we're focused on truly affordable housing in appropriate areas. In this my last 2.5 terms, that I've been focusing on bringing affordable housing into my district. We've only turned down one project because it was in a wetland and a flood zone, and we've very carefully been bringing in projects that are appropriate for where they're going. They're truly affordable. I wanted to let you know too, Hillary, that 2 of the projects I've brought into my district in the last 2 years are affordable rentals that are starting at below $600 for a 2-bedroom apartment, when you cannot really on the open market find a 2-bedroom apartment for probably less than $2,500 a month, and they're LEED certified. So these are the probably least expensive rentals in the state of Hawaii, and they're LEED certified. And I've been working with a developer who told me normally we go for silver, but we know you, Kelly, so we went for gold. So they're gold LEED certified, and if we can do that with affordable housing, we could do that with market price housing easily. So I don't know if you want me to. I'll hold off on the initiatives that I'm doing. I just wanted to give a brief introduction. Maui County has about 165,000 residents on 3 islands. We are basically one big coastline, our community, with a little bit of upcountry area to move into. So I'll talk a little bit later about managed retreat.
Great. Mayor Sam Licardo, San Jose, California. Love to hear just a little context. I mean, maybe for people that haven't been to San Jose, like, where are you located? It's California. It's a big state.
Yes, everyone should know the way to San Jose. Hi, I'm Sam. So the city of San Jose is a little more than 1 million people. It's actually the 10th largest city in the United States. Nobody would know it because we don't have a baseball team or NBA team. But there's a lot of people there. And the good news is it's an incredibly diverse city. About 40% of our adults were born in a foreign country. And we are also very proud of our spirit of innovation. We're in the heart of Silicon Valley, of course. Not only great technology, but we also invented the Eggo waffle, fruit cocktail, and garlic fries, which is like half of my diet growing up. So anyway, we're proud of innovation. So what we've been trying to do on this, what we call Climate Smart Plan, trying to move the needle in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, is really a 2-step that I know a lot of cities are going through. One is, how do you decarbonize the grid and do it quickly? And then secondly, how do you push your entire economy onto that grid, electrifying transportation and housing and so forth? And, part of that is a technological problem, and part of it is an adaptive problem. And technology is something we're good at, and so we've rapidly decarbonized. We're now about 95% of our electricity is GHG free. That's good news. We're going to keep pushing it until we get to 100%. It's actually those last yards are the hardest, whether you're in football or in climate action. But I'm confident we can get there. The harder part is what you're doing with the rest of the economy. Transportation, housing, and buildings. How do we electrify the rest of the economy to really push fossil fuels out of our economy? And I say that's an adaptive problem because it's really about bringing the community along. And frankly, we've struggled in many ways on that effort. And what we're learning slowly through trial and error is that this really requires engaging trusted community partners, particularly in a diverse city. You better have community partners who are able to communicate in Spanish and Vietnamese and Punjabi and all the other languages of our city and be trusted in those communities. We're working a lot with faith-based communities to be able to move folks into the space where they feel comfortable, whether it's through an electric car share program or perhaps with retrofits in their homes. And this is really a game of inches. I mean, it's really working, rolling up your sleeves with community to get there. The good news is we've had a lot of progress on policy, certainly. We're the largest city in the country to require all electric new construction for housing and for office and commercial. Appreciate all the work the U.S. Green Building Council in helping us on that and also pushing our building codes to really encourage folks to move along. And we're getting there on electric vehicles. California, we tend to adopt things whether good or bad, social media, whatever it might be. We'd love to be first adopters. So we're about 30% of our new vehicle registrations this year were electric vehicles. And so our work is really around trying to get that electric vehicle charging infrastructure out there, getting it rapidly deployed. That involves a lot of investment, and then really working on how we can get to that tipping point, particularly to make it more affordable for folks who are struggling every day. The bottom line is, we talk a lot about climate and for all the right reasons and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but for so many of our residents, this just is nowhere near top of mind because they're struggling so much to pay rent. And I had one of those experiences just a couple of months ago with a neighborhood leader, a Spanish-speaking woman who's an incredible champion for so much we were trying to do in the community. She said, look, you need to understand, she was telling me in Spanish, the number one preoccupation of so many of our families is paying rent. If you can't make it relevant for them and you can't have trusted community partners who can make that relevant, then none of this matters. And so really, whether it's around transforming homes with electric utilities and so on and so forth, or encouraging adoption, electric vehicle car share or other means, we've got to find ways to make it more accessible for those who are struggling financially. And in diverse big cities, that's really the game.
Wow, thanks. Thanks so much. Well, Mayor County, how are you doing down there? Love to hear, you're ready. Love to hear the context over in Des Moines. We're heading to the east.
Well, here I am, sort of the middle community here. We're about 215,000 people right in the center of Iowa. We're in we're the capital. Iowa's known as an agricultural state, and through the years we've been proud of that. But we have to look to the future, and as you know, we were one of the first star communities, and so we've been working on this for quite a period of time and working with USGBC on developing, here's what we were, where are we going, how are we going to get there, what's working, what's not. And we're doing the same thing with our city. We try to look at our climate situation, for instance. I mean, a lot of people, look at a city that's located on an island or one that's located real close to the ocean, and or a Miami, for instance, and discover that they have some very special circumstances. But it's interesting that maybe all of you don't know, but we're right in the middle, but we have some similar circumstances. I've got to tell you, a number of years ago, a word came up that I had never heard of, derecho. Well, I didn't even know what it was, and all of a sudden we see 130-mile-an-hour winds, straight-line winds, come through our city and do devastating damage to buildings, to trees, to taking down electricity for 10 days to 2 weeks in certain areas of our city and in our region. And we have to look at that, and how does that change? And then in not too long ago, 2018, on June 30th, people say, well, you don't see hurricanes, you don't see stuff like that. We saw 10 inches of rain in our city in 3.5 hours. I thought, whoa, wait a minute. This is a monsoon or something. This doesn't happen in Iowa. Oh yeah, it did. And so we have to look at it, where we were, where we are, and what this whole climate change thing means moving forward. And what is it that we can do to help mitigate and prepare resiliently for the future. We have obviously made some very serious changes in our city. We looked at where it's flooded, where these events have led, and what should we do? Should we build levees, or should we just take some of the development out that's around these low-lying areas around rivers? Now we're a city of rivers. So we're at the confluence of two of them, and then a lot of streams that feed them. Well, in that event, we saw people that we rescued out of their houses who were very nicely sleeping in bed in the middle of the night, and our rescue guys went to the door, and we said, you need to get out of the house. And they said, what's going on? I said, well, we had this horrible rainstorm, 10 inches of rain, it's coming down this 4-mile creek, and you're flooded. They said, oh, we'll get in the car and we'll go out. And we said, no, we got a boat here. Your car's underwater. And they had to come out in the middle of the night and get in a boat to get out of their house. Well, we bought them out. We bought a lot of folks out of those low-lying areas, because there are certain areas maybe we shouldn't develop. We should look at it in the future. We should figure out what we're doing and how we're doing it. But we also have to look at how we look at business, how we look at residents, how do we equitably look at the future. We also worked with our distributed energy provider, which in Iowa, or at least in our section of Iowa, is Mid-American Energy. Well, we blocked them from building more coal plants, and Warren Buffett, who seems to be the controlling owner, saw a great opportunity to get in the wind business. And they've invested billions of dollars in wind, and we are at the moment, our city, working with Mid-American Energy, we're about 83% of our energy is renewable, most of which is wind. So we're strong on that, and we want to continue to do it. We're putting solar on our buildings. We're doing everything that we can do to try to lead by example. And speaking of lead, we require all of our buildings now, new construction or redos, to be at least LEED certified or LEED silver on the new ones. We've got 2 LEED platinum buildings. So we are proud to be doing that. We're trying to work with our businesses, work with our citizens, figure out through IRA and all the other things that are out there, how do we get money to make our city more affordable. And as the mayor pointed out just a moment ago, there are a lot of people struggling to pay rent and pay utilities. We have to figure out how to benefit everyone, not just the businesses, not just one section of town, but spread it around equitably so that everybody gets a good future. So that's sort of a kickoff.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And Councilmember King, I think they've both kind of talked a little bit about how climate change has specifically impacted their communities already. And I don't know if you've had a dairy show on Maui, in Maui County, but is it sea level rise? Like, what's the biggest issue that you're grappling with, and how's it impacting your community already?
Well, sea level rise, certainly. We actually have, as I'm speaking, a couple of hotel, condo areas where we've got buildings that are crumbling into the ocean that we're shoring up. We've got shorelines that are covered with sandbags, way past their lifespan. We've got, like I mentioned earlier, the diminishing wetlands. Wetlands are our first defense against flooding, and especially in the South Maui district, and they've gone from over 200 acres to less than 25 acres. And as we look at drainage, we're trying to revamp our drainage plans because from 15 years ago when putting in drainage meant you made a concrete highway from, upcountry to the ocean where the water just sped into the ocean. Now we're starting to look at ecological solutions that can absorb the water, that will put less water out and cleaner water. We've got issues with wildfires, not as bad as California. I'll give you that because, we're getting big ones, and we're not prepared for it because we're not used to having wildfires. So we don't have good response systems yet. We're trying to build up that resiliency there, and so part of it is the system of resiliency hubs and looking at what are the issues in each community. But one of the things that's really impacted us has been this over-tourism. And we have a Maui Island plan that prescribes the level of tourism that we should not go over. And it's basically, one tourist to every person who lives there. And now and at the max 2, and now we're at 3. So, we've gone over our prescription, and that's impacting a lot. That's impacting our reef system. Our reef system is our first defense against erosion, and we're losing it at such a rate that you have to go much further out to see a viable reef and to see the fish and the beautiful coral. So, that's led to some of the actions we've taken. We've passed the most aggressive sunscreen ban in the world. You cannot come to Maui County and use any chemical sunscreens, only the 2 mineral sunscreens, because we are putting a 55-gallon drum worth of chemicals into our ocean daily through these chemicals. It not only affects the health of the reef, but the ecosystem, the marine life. It affects the invertebrates. So those are some of the things that we're doing. I'll stop there and others answer.
That's fascinating.
And San Jose, we have about 10 flights a day that come from Hawaii. So now I know that all the sunburned Howleys are all coming from Maui, I guess. Is that? Yeah.
Mayor Liccardo, I wouldn't mind, since Councilmember King was just talking about, wildfires. I don't know that we are prepared for that. I'm kind of curious, internal to government, how are governmental functions changing? How have you had to shift or do things differently as a city, with whether it's infrastructure projects, water, wastewater, streets, roads? How is climate change impacting the way that your government operates? Have you had to step up new boards and commissions,
Right.
bring it, engage other people?
Well, we've had our emergency operations office up and running for the majority of the last 5 years. We've had, and it's not just the fires, of course the fires are horrible, the smoke from the fires is even worse because obviously there's a lot of folks with vulnerable health conditions who are challenged by that. We've had floods. We are in the middle of a 3-year drought that's likely to continue to be chronic. We have had a lot of challenges with the grid and power outages because of heat events, a lot of intense heat. We have not yet had locust boils or frogs, but those are probably scheduled next year. So it means you're constantly on emergency response, and there's a lot of tired people right now in our emergency operations center. Thank God they're brilliant, but they're all working really hard. What we've really had to focus on as we think about both mitigation and adaptation, we're honestly doing a much better job on mitigating than we are on adapting, because this adapting stuff is really, really hard, especially when it's coming at you in a lot of different directions. Thank God we haven't yet had an earthquake in the last few years, but we know it's all coming. So one of the things I had to do was really make sure we elevated within the city bureaucracy leadership for focusing on adaptation and climate resilience, because this is the last thing anyone thinks about when we're mired in all the other crises of the day, whether it's homelessness or rising cost of living or anything else. Everybody's scrambling in different directions, police, so forth, and trying to focus on what's happening in the long run is the last thing that happens unless you make it very explicit. So we made sure in the city manager's office where the deputy city manager is doing this, and that's all they think about all day, and they've got a team working on it, whether it's focusing on sea level rise and making sure we're building levees and really focusing on mostly natural solutions, sea level rise and floods, or in the case of, finding partners to build out microgrids such as what Google's doing right now in my city. So part of it is elevating, part of it is forcing people to work across silos, because that's not something we're very good at in government. So we create an internal working group. You gotta get everybody from every key department in that working group, and you gotta force them to meet and talk to one another, because something about all of us in government, I mean, we all love talking, except we don't talk to each other inside City Hall nearly enough. And then you've got to make it explicit. In everything we're doing, for example, everything we vote on, we've got a report that comes to council, and there's a paragraph in the bottom that tells the council and the public however this vote is going to affect our climate goals and our adaptation resilience goals. So everybody is cognizant of it, and the public is aware, and that awareness is part of making this implicit in our decision making.
Glad I asked you the question because I didn't know about that. Mayor County, do you want to kind of feed off of that and then talk about how things are working on the inside? In Des Moines, in the city of Des Moines, how are departments, are departments pretty siloed on climate and sustainability issues, or how have you brought them together to work towards these issues?
Well, it's interesting. I don't want to take complete credit for that, but I will tell you that we have been trying to break down those silos. We have all of our departments meet together. We have goals in their buildings and in their operations, in their equipment, to look at every aspect of the issues of how we operate, how we lower our use of equipment, how we look at our buildings and how they operate. As I said, we're looking at how we build them and how we rebuild them. Keep in mind, to everybody out here, Iowa's a little different than these two places. We see, as I look at Burnsville back here, they probably relate to us a little bit more. We have an interesting phenomena where we will see temperatures that have been as low as 30 below zero and as high as 110. So we've got to look at both extremes as well. And as I talked about some of these extreme other events, we also are now in the middle of a drought. And we're seeing our water resources, and we're trying to now dwindle. And as our surface water is our source for water, and so we have to look at that and how that's used and what's happening upstream and how we keep that water clean. And I saw the Mississippi Valley people in here just before we came up on stage, and looking at what's going on all up and down that Mississippi, those 16 states that drain into the Mississippi, they're all worried. Looking from Minnesota all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, and they're worried the water is so low that they're going to start seeing salt water back up into the Mississippi, and so now they're trying to figure out how to block that and keep the fresh water, and we hope that it starts to be different. But we have to look now at conserving our water resources and what it is and how we treat it and how people use it and how we have enough drinking water, fresh drinking water, for all of our citizens. And we sometimes shudder to think that there's those who would like to ignore us all and water their posh 2 or 3 acre lawns, that is with a nice turf grass out of, somewhere out of the south that needs a lot of water and a lot of sun. It's we have an interesting situation. We need to be resilient. We have to think about it, but we again have to think about it in an equitable manner, because not everybody has that situation. Some people are worried about their water resources to drink, to take a shower, to cook with, to do everything else. And we have to look at all of our resources. And of course, now we're looking at everybody in new builds. How do we mitigate, and trying to follow some of the other examples. We're trying to give incentives for people to use all electric in their HVAC and all their appliances, and try to guide them to IRA incentives and funding to do everything from buying electric cars to looking at all their utilities in their house and how it is that they can buy those and get some incentives to do it. We're trying to educate our public. We're trying to let them know what the possibilities are. And of course, I don't know if it's going to be one of the questions, but we have a planning process that we're working through with our citizens, with all of our departments, to deliver that out and educate our public on what we're doing, how we do it, and hopefully create a great future and a sustainable future for all.
Well, that leads into, I was going to ask you all about community and political buy-in for climate change, in all your respective cities and counties. So you started us by talking about the engagement process that you have right now. So clearly education and outreach and really working with community is helping to get buy-in. But let's come back to this end. Councilmember King, when you work on climate, is everybody right at the table? They're ready to work with you? They're excited about it?
Most everybody, I will say. Unfortunately, we just had an election. Our outgoing mayor, in the first year of his 4 years, went and met with Donald Trump's people, came back and said, yes, let's relax all of our environmental regulations. So that's what we've been dealing with the last 4 years. That's why I sit on these panels with these wonderful mayors, and I just salivate and wish we had one of you. But we're changing this year. We're getting a new mayor. We're hopefully more climate friendly. So, but the people that we've been working with have been people in the community, honestly, not necessarily the administration. One of the examples is the International Energy Conservation Code, which I have been, would come to my committee as the Climate Action, Resilience, and Environment Committee, which we lovingly call CARE Committee, was promised to me in March, was promised to me in June, was promised to me in November. I still haven't seen our climate action plan or our IECC code changes. So, I just went into the private sector and I brought in, sustainable architects, I brought in green building consultants, and we looked at the code and we made the recommendations for changes that are going to help our community as a tropical area. But that's how I've had to work more with the experts in my community than the administration, and it's been a little bit tough because we were told by our administration that he was not going to create a climate change committee or commission in his administration. I created the Climate Action Committee on the council. The next year there was a climate change commission in the administration, but they haven't done anything. So we're not aligned. We are watching an administration working in silos. The one thing that I have to say that they have done is they've done a vulnerability assessment for each. They've made each department in the administration. But I've gone through periods where I've gotten funding for regional wastewater treatment facility, which is a new concept in Hawaii. Mostly everything is centralized in Hawaii within each county. And this is going to be something that's regional, that's mobile, that will take care of the Ma'alaya area, which is an area of condos and residents who have been putting their waste into the Ma'alaya Bay with only primary treatment. There's no secondary or tertiary treatment. So you might as well be going to the bathroom in the bay. And so we have an impaired body of water. And when I proposed this project to take care of just this area that's putting all this effluent into the bay, our mayor opposed it because he said, why should we help those people in Ma'alaya? They're all, transplants. We're looking at the environment. It doesn't matter who's flushing the toilet. That's going into the ocean. So, I am having a little bit of a hard time. The community is coming together because the community values the environment. The community understands the value of that we are losing our precious resources. Our entire community that depends on tourism depends on the environment. Without an environment, we won't have tourism. So we saw during the pandemic a lot of our environment come back. I mean, somebody told me they saw, I know we have seahorses in Hawaii. I've never seen one. And somebody told me they saw a whole school of seahorses in Maui during the pandemic. And the water was clearing up. And now we have more tourists than we had before the pandemic. So we're trying to balance that out. We're trying to diversify our economy. And we're keeping our fingers crossed for the next mayor to be able to work together, because you cannot do this work in silos. You have to be aligned. The policymakers have to be aligned with the administration, or you're just going to be one big tug of war, and the legislation is going to go back and forth. We've passed a ton of legislation to protect our watersheds, map out our wetlands and restore our wetlands, to lower the lighting for our seabirds and our turtle hatchlings. And I am really hoping that the next conservative council doesn't come in and undo the things that we've done. So I really appreciate these kind of efforts because I've found global advocates to come in and testify on the bills that the ordinances I've been passing. The best thing about the pandemic is we now have access to the entire world of experts, and they will call in at 1 o'clock in the morning their time to help us, pass a seabird lighting bill.
Gotta love Zoom sometimes, right? But it sounds like you've done a lot of coalition building. So when when you're ready to move something forward, you've really built the relationships.
Yes, and it's the community that's come forward. I created a climate action advisory committee out of members of the community that are influencing the departments, that are influencing the other council members. So that you have to build where you can.
Yeah.
Those coalitions have to be where you can. We're also reaching out to other communities and not reinventing the wheel when it comes to policy. We've copied Colorado's benchmarking bill where we're looking at net zero houses. Anything 5,000 square feet or bigger, it has to be built to net zero, and then we're going to go down from there. So we're collaborating across the country with other cities and counties. We're collaborating vertically with our state and our federal government. And that's really the name of the game. We all have to work together. It's too hard to reinvent the wheel every time.
Yeah. Mayor Liccardo, you mentioned in your opening about electrification of new construction, and I don't think you turbed it, but you had a natural gas ban essentially. So, how did that go? How did that move forward?
We try not to say gas ban because it sounds so negative. So we want to say lots of positive, happy things, like electrifying our buildings and reducing utility costs, we hope. Anyway, it comes back to something I said earlier, which is around finding trusted community partners. We actually use some grant dollars to invest in many of our communities that have traditionally been left out of these conversations, forming, for example, in East San Jose, a group of, through nonprofits that were trusted, a group of promotoras. These were mostly moms who just had incredible networks at the schools and at church and so forth, who were able to bring people into the conversation in a way that made it much more effective. I mean, certainly there's the battle at the council and getting the policy across, but that nothing matters unless you can bring other people along in the community to actually implement this. And so being intentional about it and investing in community organizations, CBOs, that have those networks and those relationships is really important. Literally paying volunteers, who would otherwise not be paid, of course, to do the work, because these are people who are struggling financially and need resources. That's been really important for us. Another strategy that's been important is really just elevating the voices of youth. We know the next generation gets it way more and this is clearly generational. And if you're under 30, you absolutely get it. And we try to do more to try to get the microphone in front of young people because they're passionate and because they're willing to get out there and knock on doors. It can't all be done by Zoom. Although we are the global headquarters of Zoom, we love the company, but I think we all know we are Zoom exhausted, and you actually need to talk to people one-on-one, particularly in diverse communities and across different languages. So it requires a lot of hustle, and that means getting the youth involved and really elevating them. And then finally, I think getting the community engaged, it doesn't hurt to have a campaign. I mean, literally going to the voters. We had that opportunity a couple occasions. One, when some developers were trying to build 1,000 luxury homes in the hillsides in violation of our general plan. And of course, they called it affordable housing for seniors. And I think the homes are going to sell for like $1.75 million or $2 million. And so they tried to go to the ballot to get voters approval because they knew we wouldn't do it. And it was an opportunity for us to actually get people engaged around open space protection and protection of all that we love in communities that are beautiful, like all of our communities are. And that started to mobilize people and helped us then to mobilize the same community to get another measure passed 6 months later to protect open space in another part of our city. And so I just think that political campaigns help. They get folks talking about it, they get folks paying attention, and get organizations working together and motivated. And the other key thing is have great state senators like Bob Wieckowski, who unfortunately is leaving us in a couple months, but nice to see you, Bob.
Mayor County, so you have been working on accountability, on sustainability and climate action for a long time. I'm just curious, what are your biggest barriers? What are the biggest challenges to meeting your targets and your goals in Des Moines specifically? Uh-oh, I got a chuckle.
Well, sometimes I think one of the biggest barriers is always money. You know, what are the sources? How are you going to get this done? Part of it is also education. And how do you educate your constituency, whether they be the businesses or your residents or everybody else, on what we're doing and why we're doing it and what the benefits are long term? Because, you know, an awful lot of people look very short term. They look at return on investment this year. But, you know, a lot of what we're working on is, what does this look like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 100 years from now? How do we plan in that fashion so that we think about, you know, is are we back to normal? Are we all right? Okay. And, you know, as the Indian would say, is what we do today going to benefit the seventh generation? We have to start thinking that far out. It isn't about return on this year or next year. It's about how we build communities that are sustainable for the long term. And I think that, you know, we in Des Moines have done that. We're in the process now of going around to every residential structure and looking at its condition and what its needs are. The average home in Des Moines, including the new ones, is 59 years. So a lot of those houses not only have structural problems, they're not the best insulated, they don't have the best glass, they don't have the best doors, they don't have the best, a lot of stuff, or the most efficient furnaces or air conditioners or whatever. So we try to help them look at their circumstance and help them identify ways that they could get funding and some of the incentives that are coming through some of these federal programs to do that. And so essentially I'll go through what we hope we're going to do. You know, we're going to try to go out and identify the risks and the opportunities, not only around climate risks and everything else, but living risks for all those citizens. We have to define and refine goals that we want to reach that we think are attainable. We have to summarize those and put those down and put them in timelines and put them in priorities to try to figure out how we best spend those dollars to see the best outcomes, not only in the near term, but as I said a moment ago, in the long term. And then we have to build community awareness and educate people as we try to convince everybody these are the right things to do. We all need to work together to implement these solutions, because it'll be good for you, it'll be good for the community, and it'll be good long-term for all of our resources and the use, and hopefully keep 1.5 alive.
Yeah, well, so it sounds like you've assessed your community from an equity perspective, like who's most vulnerable and where the need is on the building side. Are you tying that in then to how you're getting ready for the IRA and, you know, the funds specifically? Like, is that what you're gearing up for so that you're prepared for that?
In a word, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what, as you were describing all of that, I'm like, he's getting ready. So how are you both getting ready for the hopefully deluge, right? I mean, I worked in government when there was the Recovery Act and we had EECBG, and those funds, I mean, probably started like half the sustainability offices around the country, you know, back in the 2008, 2009 period. So maybe kind of what are you forecasting? What do you think is going to happen in your communities, and what are you specifically doing to get ready?
Yeah, I think as we think about the IRA and the implementation in communities, everybody's very focused on what our government's doing, but the reality is these decisions are being made by consumers, whether it's purchasing an electric vehicle, for example, and homeowners, renters, and retrofitting buildings. Those decisions, those micro daily decisions, are the ones that are going to dictate the success of this measure. It's a fantastic law. It means nothing if we can't bring people along. And so this looks a lot different than an awful lot of other federal laws, it seems to me. And so really it's around exercising the muscles about some of the things I described earlier around making sure we have trusted community partners, and are we building networks with campaigns? How are we elevating voices of youth that are really going to advocate and hustle for us? Those are the kinds of things that are going to help us get to success, and I think the cities that are able to do that most effectively will win.
Council member?
Okay, well, it is all about priority setting, and infrastructure is really important, especially for an island that's already seeing some of our shoreline highways wash away. We're having issues with some of our 54 bridges to Hana, and we have an infrastructure priority that's really important, but beyond what we're looking at with climate change. We have so many people in our community because of our distance from the next civilization. We're the furthest away from another civilization, any civilization on the earth. Hawaii is. And so we lose our imports. We lose 85% of our food imports. If 85% of our food is imported, we lose energy. So a lot of this money is going to go into energy infrastructure, to food security. Our county council is giving away millions. We started our first year 3 years ago, giving away $2.5 million, and we're upping the ante every year in micro grants for small farmers, because we want to be growing our own food. We're very food vulnerable. If we can't put food on the table, and if we can't build affordable housing, which requires that infrastructure, nobody cares about climate change today, because they see that as something that's happening in the future. Really, a lot of people turn their backs on the pandemic, because they're saying, why should I care about wearing a mask and getting a vaccination when my kids can't eat, when rent is $2,000 for a studio apartment? So a lot of this is going into the infrastructure so that we can make people secure enough to care about climate change and to put that extra effort in. So it falls upon really the County Council of Maui to enact the ordinances that we need to protect our environment. And we are getting support because we have a lot of really strong nonprofit environmental organizations, and ones that will come into, like Environmental Defense Fund will show up. The Rainforest Alliance Network showed up when there was an organization called Blue Earth that was going to be importing 100 million gallons of palm oil a year by burning down the rainforest in Indonesia and planting palm oil plantations. We've been really resistant like that, and we've been resilient because we have long arms into nonprofits on the mainland and around the world. But I really look at it as it needs to be a holistic approach. And if you're a politician, you know that, because if you try to campaign only on climate change and people aren't able to put food on the table and they can't pay their rent, so they're living in their car and they can't even find a place to park the car to sleep overnight, which right now our state makes it illegal to park in you can't park on the side of the road in any public parkway, any public land and sleep overnight. So I'm working on some of those, relaxing some of those, creating pilot projects, tiny home projects, and a lot of this money is going to have to go into the infrastructure to make people food secure, housing secure, so that they can support the initiatives we're putting out there for climate mitigation and also for disaster preparedness, because we're very vulnerable as islands. We know it's coming. Maui has been the safest of all the major 4 counties so far. We've had the least amount of disasters, so it's coming. I don't know if that's wood, but I'll knock on it. But that's where our preparation is.
Yeah, like true community resilience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A holistic resilience.
A holistic approach. So you're taking us to this big last question, and if there is a question or two, we may be able to take it. But if you were granted a wish and you could wave your wand and just make a major sustainability or climate transformation happen in your communities, what would that look like?
For me, it would be moving everybody out of the sea level rise exposure area up, country, what we call up country. Right now, we're looking at billions of dollars of loss, of physical loss, because everything was built along the shoreline. Who doesn't want to live on the beach, right, next to the ocean? And so people are coming out and in meetings I've been in. Of course, the county's going to buy our home and move it up country when the shores are left. I'm sorry, but we're not. We'd be broke in a year if we tried to fix everybody's homes and even every facility. We're starting now with managed retreat. We've created a managed retreat fund, a revolving fund, but that's going to be for moving county facilities and disaster relief hubs into those zones. We are not going to be able to afford. We have multi-million-dollar. I mean, Jeff Bezos was just on our island earlier this year and bought 4 homes in one day, multi-million-dollar homes. We're not moving his homes up country. We're not going to give him money for his homes. Sorry, but enjoy your years on the beach. So that's what we need. If we had a magic wand, we can move everybody. Residents first. Millionaires can be last. Up to a safer area. That's what I would do.
My wish would be have Jeff Bezos come over to our neighborhood and show a little of his love and money to all of our community. No, actually, I think if we could magically reduce the cost of energy storage, where we had just massive batteries in every neighborhood, literally in everyone's garage, or alternatively just in every community with every affordable housing complex that we have, that would be transformational. I mean, we're making incredible gains as a country, as a globe, in reducing the cost of renewables. Intermittency is a challenge. We know grid reliability is a huge challenge in California, and we're pouring tens of billions of dollars into maintaining transmission lines and undergrounding them and dealing with wildfires. And I would love to see us move to this new distributed generation and storage world, where we become so much more resilient and stop wasting all this money paying for PG&E's problems. Sorry to mention our investor-owned utility. That's just our own real challenge. But we know these are challenges throughout the country. Investor-owned utilities have been often neglecting the infrastructure. It's costing us enormously, all of us, and we're all paying it through our utility bills.
Mayor County, what would you do?
Well, as long as we're dreaming, I think I would like to look at everybody's circumstance and situation. And again, looking at equitable disbursement of solutions for everybody. For some people, it's food. For some people, it's cost of living in their house. For some people, it's just putting a roof over their head. And how do we, in our circumstance, make our communities more livable, more affordable, more energy efficient, and understand the needs of all of our people. And that's partly what our planning is all about, to get all of our departments, whether it's public works or parks, and I will, give accolades to our parks. We've got, in our little town, we've got 77 parks. And our goal is to put a park within a 10-minute walk, either that or a walking trail or path or bike path, of every single citizen in our city, so that everybody has an equal opportunity to enjoy life and have access to the things that they might need to get that relaxation if they're in a sheltered place, to get to a park, to get to someplace else. We have to look also at, again, the future. What are our energy sources, and get more to renewable, and figure out how we get beyond 83% to 100% renewable, and that's our goal by 2035. We are the first city in the United States to declare that we're going to get that done. And as I say, our energy provider, we're 83%. They tried to tell me before I came here, I said, where are we now? They tried to tell me we're 88, but they haven't released that yet, so I'm going to still go with the 83. but we all want to be at 100. And we have to look at our future, look at what we're doing. We look at our city, where people live, where people work, to do a plan to meet the needs of all of our citizens. And that would be my dream, that we could do that.
Well, I think one thing that came across in the panel is just the empathy that the three of you have, really trying to put yourself in the shoes of the people in your community, and you are really selfless leaders, and I'm just so glad to have this opportunity. I've been told we do have time for a question from the audience. Is that okay with you all? You have a minute? Okay. Do we have one?
Thank you. Hello, my name is Yasemin. I'm a councilwoman in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you all so much. You all gave me great ideas for things to take back home to implement. The one that I'm really curious about is the green buildings, and if you could go into a little bit more specific. So in Phoenix, we've done about more than half of our GHG emissions come from transportation. So I've been super focused on EV roadmap, transportation electrification, but the next piece is really about buildings. And I feel like the one thing I already expect and anticipate is a lot of backlash from the development community, fear from other council members about mandates. So I'm just wondering, like, is what you did a mandate, or what does the program look like?
Yeah, it's a mandate. Like a lot of other cities, we adopted a minimum standard of silver LEED for all buildings, and then with the all-electric mandate, which we passed in stages over the course of a couple of years and completed in early 2020. The key to it was getting developers around the table early. They recognize the life cycle cost of the buildings. As you know, they don't always bear those costs because they're often flipping to let somebody else build, or they're building and they're flipping. And so making sure you've got sophisticated builders who are in the room who understand how those life cycle costs play into the price, making sure you've got good information going out to the markets about the energy profiles. And one of the things we did a couple years in advance of that to sort of prepare for it was to ensure we had benchmarking on buildings, and that folks were forced to disclose energy profiles of their buildings so that market decisions were being made based on, hey, what's it going to cost to heat and cool this building? When you start to make those things more transparent in the market, that starts to bring developers along to recognize, hey, the price I'm going to get for selling this property is going to be definitely affected by this. So we'd be happy to partner. You've got a great mayor in Kate Gallego. We're happy to share information with all of you about the folks we've been reaching out to, and then obviously having really smart folks at the U.S. Green Building Council. We're working with NRDC as well, and Bloomberg. Always great to have folks with a lot of expertise who can bring that in.
One follow-up, how long was the whole process from like the round tables with developers to passing the policy?
If you count all of the screaming and yelling and hugging it out, I'd say about a year and a half for the first stage, which was residential, and then we did another year for commercial.
Not bad.
So, I can add to that too. Since other communities have already done this, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. For us, it was about 3 to 4 months to pass this because we followed on Colorado's net zero, their first net zero ordinance. And what they did was they started at 5,000 square foot homes and larger, and then they went into phasing it down to 3,000. So we did that. We started at 5,000 square foot homes. All 5,000 square foot homes in Maui County have to be built to net zero. And once we get a year or so under our belt, the idea would be to go down and make benchmarks for 3,000 square foot homes, and then from there. But when you start with a larger home like that, which you have to be pretty wealthy on Maui to have a 5,000 square foot home, and those people are going to be too embarrassed to come out and buck this piece of legislation because they can afford it and they know it. So, when you step into it like that, and we don't have to do the whole year and a half because Colorado went through it first for us. But when you partner on with, and you look at some of these other counties that are doing the same thing, or cities in your case, you can get some of these things done quicker because they've been done somewhere else before, so you can show the success, and then you can kind of map out how you're going to step it down, so you make more stringent requirements for upcoming other, smaller size homes as well.
Excuse me, got a fly in the eye. Just to let you know, we did benchmarking in Des Moines, and as I mentioned, we're looking at all housing, but on the look on the benchmarking, all buildings 25,000 square feet and up is where we started. Now, I will tell you that, as we all have indicated, there's varying degrees of acceptance to doing that, and it took us 2 to 3 years to actually try to get everybody to comply, and then when they complied, they didn't really want anybody to see the results, because if that becomes, all of a sudden it starts affecting rent, if it's an industrial or a commercial building, or an apartment owner doesn't want to reveal that because each one of the units has its own HVAC unit in it, and if your building is not performing very well, and you're going to pay another $100 a month to heat it and cool it, they were somewhat reluctant to want to let that go. So you have to, do sort of, at least in Iowa, a nice sell, soft sell, so we don't infringe on their rights. But we try to convince everybody, but this is the rights of your occupants as well. They need to know how your building performs. And so that's how we tried to sell it, but it for us wasn't as easy as just, we passed it, city council voted for it, we pushed it out there, and everybody's going to get it done in the next 2 weeks. Didn't happen.
I also wanted to add that I met with your mayor at C40. I owe her a visit. I actually live in Tucson, so let's talk. I'll make a visit up and we'll figure this out. So with that, thank you. I know we went a little over. Thanks for your patience, but thank you all. This has been a really fun panel. I'm glad you could participate and enjoy the rest of your COP.
Thank you, Hillary. Great job.